Hey guys, so I'm doing this spontaneous live because our dear friend Tommy Sunshine texted me. He's out on the streets right now, and we're going to bring him in right now to talk about what's happening in New York. Hey Tommy, can you hear me? I know your audio is getting set up right now. We can see you right now. Your audio is being connected. Tommy, Tommy's out there on the streets right now.
Excessive violence for no reason.
The cops doing their first arrest. Appears to be in Midtown.
Ordered to leave the roadway and utilize the
Now, I can see that, Tommy. Yeah. Tommy, where are you right now?
We are moving. We are moving. We are moving.
From what I can tell online, they're kettling in organizers on the streets right now. Hundreds of cops.
We're going on the move.
We're going on the move. Okay. So this is really interesting because it's not like Donald Trump.
Holy shit.
Tommy, if you can hear me, what's happening?
I cannot hear you.
Okay.
But I want to be able to show you what's happening.
Perfect. Let's watch this for a second. I mean, it seems like there aren't a ton of folks on the streets, and if so, they seem very peaceful. But look at all of those cops. A cop just shoved again. They're not allowed to walk on the streets. This is a thing that's common in New York, where you show up and you're there protesting peacefully.
Biden's America.
Tommy just said Biden's America. I mean, this is what's so fascinating here is that
all of you
14th Street.
are some bitch ass motherfuckers.
This is not a result of Trump potentially trying to seize the presidency. This isn't like Trump went to the courts. What's going on right now is they preemptively boarded up thousands of businesses and banks across America, big corporations and banks, and that's 14th Street. That is sort of the line of demarcation from uptown versus downtown. And they're just preventing folks from marching.
Look what's going on the other side of the street.
Just cops lining up. Hundreds of cops. Those are all cops on the other side. Or are they kettling them in? Oh, I can't. Tommy, we can't see. You got to zoom in a little bit. I think there seems to be an altercation.
This is a police riot. You're watching a police riot. This has been a peaceful protest since it started. Everyone!
So they're right by Union Square, not too far, like a half a block away, which is a central point where organizers meet up in New York. Often it's also a big subway stop. And look at that. They've got a bus there ready to arrest people. That guy's trying to bust through and cross the street. And they grab him immediately. And I guess the big question is, for what? For what? They're exercising their free speech. I mean, this is such an extraordinary abuse of police power while Donald Trump is still president to protect what? Banks? No, there's no looting. There's nothing happening right now. People want to show up and exercise their free speech in a democracy around an election. This is such an extraordinary response to a few folks showing up. I mean, this is such a common occurrence in New York. And the other thing is these police officers are so used to some of these organizers. Tell us more, Tommy. Tell us. I'm listening.
I have never seen anything like this. I've been protesting in the city for 10 years. I have never seen anything like this. Not even close. This is just like pure, unbridled police aggression. And it has nothing to do with anything. We were totally peaceful, and then they just snapped. And, this is what they do. Look at this chaos.
Peace. Peace signs. Okay, they are at Union Square. Tommy, what?
There are hundreds of police.
Yeah.
And I would guess right now, half the police force of New York City is on the streets. I drove up 6th Avenue. There were 20 officers on every corner from 14th Street to 59th Street. I've never in my life seen a police presence like this. This is not a police presence. This
Occupation
is a coup. And if it's not about DC, it's about the Police Benevolence Society doing a coup over the fucking city of New York. That's what this is. Look at this. You guys provoked all of this.
Yeah.
You realize this.
You provoked all this.
The fact that your actions.
Why are they doing this?
There hasn't been one piece of graffiti put up tonight. There hasn't been any violence tonight. There hasn't been any of that. This was completely and top to bottom provoked by the cops. And that's
Tommy,
what this is about.
if you can hear me, Tommy?
Yes, I can.
How many protesters are there? How many organizers? How many people are there in comparison?
200 tops.
200 tops.
200 tops, and I can see with my eyes right now about 500 cops.
Was there like?
That's what's happening right now.
I mean, what were they expecting tonight versus last night?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know, but you know, all I know is that there is.
What's happening?
Hang on, there's something going on. I mean, listen. I think we're on the move. So let's see what's going on at the other end of the street. Like,
Okay.
I want you to see this police line. Swinging the bat. That's cute. Look at this police line. Look at that wall of cops. For what?
For what? Yeah. I mean, this isn't like the DNC or the RNC. That was when I really started to see this stuff heat up. This is, like you said, there's 200 people on the streets. That's not.
I mean, this is Gestapo tactics by the New York City police toward kids that were doing a teach-in about Black liberation. And listen, I mean, someone's screaming for something. Someone's playing "Fuck the Police." That's nice. But no. What? Just come on. Look at this. This is what America looks like in 2020. Oh look, more. Great.
More cops are showing up, and that's an M14 bus there, right?
Yeah, this is like 14th and Broadway. Like,
okay, that's right by
is where I am in Manhattan. But I mean,
are they blocking traffic? I mean, the cops seem to have shut. I mean, M14th Street they just shut down.
The whole everything's shut down. Like, you know, everything in every direction is shut down, and it's the cops.
When did they start doing this today? Do you have a sense?
No, I mean, I know over in Washington Square Park, this has been going on for hours. They were doing snatch and grabs of anyone who was dressed in black. So anybody that was like
in New York,
you know, right, exactly. Anybody that was, you know, dressed in black, they were snatching off the streets and throwing in vans. If you look on my Twitter, there's some posts that people did of like whole buses full of kids they arrested. So I mean, like, and again, for what? Like, there's none of this has been like provoked by anything.
What's happening?
See how that goes.
I mean,
you never know.
Let's put this in perspective, Tommy. You know, you and I have been on the streets together. You've been on the streets to be doing this for 10 years. I've gotten into shouting matches with cops, but they've never rounded me up and put me in a van. They've never arrested me for shouting at them, at least. This seems to be, in terms of how unusual this is, usually when folks get arrested, they're either caught up in the middle of something or...
Yeah, I want you to see this. Hang on. Look at how many cops. Look how many cops are over here.
Can you put it higher up? Oh, there we go. They're just doing nothing. My theory on this is Trump can't have a military coup d'etat because the military is not with him. The generals are opposed to Trump. But he can have a police coup. And that's city by city, block by block, fascist cops are taking leftist cities. That's my theory on this.
I mean, what people don't understand is that the Police Benevolent Society in New York City backed Trump.
Right, exactly.
As did most every other police department across the country. And since we now know that the majority of white Americans voted for Trump, they voted for this.
Well, and meanwhile, de Blasio, is he doing anything? Of course not. Technically the police union, the police department, the police chief follows orders of de Blasio. Look at this, more police showing up. Tommy, tell us a little bit more about what usual protests look like. I don't know why I'm moving it. You can hear me. Yeah, I can't hear you.
No, it's all good. I mean, typically the police, follow on the sidewalk like they were doing for 2 hours, and everything was fine. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they just started grabbing people out of the streets. Oh, wait, now they're pushing us off the sidewalk. Hang on.
Yeah.
I think we're about to get kettled.
I was just going to say, have you been kettled in yet?
I mean, there's cops in every direction.
Everyone, please cross the street to the other side.
Who is doing that? Is that an organizer?
My I just stepped in a puddle with my booted my fractured toe boot, so now I have a wet sock. That's a good time.
Done that at a protest. I wouldn't. Well, in this transition, a couple years ago, I got caught in a snowstorm, and it was the first time I wore my boots. It was like the first snowfall, and they had holes in them, and they started drenching my feet. And I had to pull over at an Anne Klein or something and say, I don't just socks, shoes, anything. Just give me something. And we were massaging my feet. It was the craziest New York protest experience in terms of hypothermia I'd ever had.
I mean, what you have to know about tonight is that tonight's protest was black-led. It was very focused on trans and queer liberation, and all of this was very peaceful. I mean, the kids from Portland brought those peace signs from the front line from Portland, and I was speaking to them earlier tonight. And this has been completely peaceful in every way. And it was, as always, the cops that are the aggressors every time. This was not the kids doing anything to provoke this. This was entirely the police. But I think this is, everyone keeps talking about what everything's going to look like on the other side of COVID. This is what everything is going to look like on the other side of COVID. This police state that I'm showing you that is happening in New York City, and that is happening in multiple neighborhoods in New York City. There are multiple helicopters flying in the air.
People. For 200 people?
Right.
That's like a normal gathering in New York, and it's nothing.
I mean, this is a new surveillance state. That's what we are living in. And it's not just cameras anymore. Now it's actual, unbridled police aggression in the streets. And there's nothing to mitigate it. And most of the mayors in the biggest cities, who are Democratic mayors, are totally under the thumb and beholden to the police unions, who basically run the cities. So there's no repercussions for any of this. I mean, it's not like de Blasio could tell the PBA to stop this. They would just laugh at it. Like he has no control over them whatsoever. And here we are. And what happens next? You know what I mean? Like, so I mean, this is just shocking to me, because when I came out tonight, I expected things to be chill. I expected things to be the tone of like, hey, it doesn't matter who wins this, we're still going to have to fight, which is what it was. But it wasn't violent, and it wasn't turbocharged, and it wasn't any of that. But here we are, and now this well, I know of at least 3 other instances tonight in other parts of Manhattan where things were as crazy, if not crazier, than what I was just showing.
Okay, so Tommy, just a reminder to folks, we're talking to Tommy Sunshine. Tommy Sunshine is an amazing activist. He's also a world famous DJ and musician and producer. And he was a surrogate for Bernie Sanders, and that's how we got to know each other. But Tommy, let's just go back a little bit and sort of talk about the scope of protests in New York. Like what we're seeing right now, it looks like several hundreds of police, maybe even more, helicopters over what's a peaceful protest. Like, I'm not seeing anything, having been in these places and seen, like, okay, sometimes there's a little bit of escalation, there's a little bit of arguing, they kettle extra hard, and then they push up against you, and then you fight back. I mean, sometimes that happens, and then it can provoke arrests. But it seems as if the number of police in relation to the level of protesting is really uneven, or even typical horrific New York police sort of aggression. So talk about like what previous experiences have been like, just like, say during, say 4 years ago. I'm not even going with the uprising.
I mean, I can tell you this. Whatever is changing, and whoever is giving this order to change, it's not good.
When you say order to change, meaning the change of strategy?
Just absolutely unforgivable aggression.
Yeah.
Towards people who aren't aggressive. Like, I mean, that's the part of this that is so perplexing, is that none of this was provoked. And as with every other one of the, I mean, listen, I've been going, I started going out to Ducati Park in the Occupy movement, and I was going to Black Lives Matter protests in 2014 in New York City when they were 40, 50 people. And I saw an escalation May going into June. I saw a wickedness and an evilness. Oh shit! Somebody's really hurt. Hang on.
Don't let her down. Don't let her down, though.
Shit! Somebody got really hurt. Probably. I mean, listen. Here's something that people aren't talking about this, right? Like, yes, there's the obvious harm that's done by cops with batons and with pepper spray and whatever else, right? But most of the people here in this protest are people of color who have suffered their entire lives from this system. And at a certain point, you break. Like, I mean, there is mental repercussions from this aggression from the police that it's PTSD. I mean, this is no different than going off to war. You know what I mean? Like, you're being exposed to the same. I mean, they're certainly exhibiting the same levels of aggression that a soldier would.
It's a common thing in the movement where, you're constantly at war, either tactically at war, in communication at war, like whether it's like Twitter war even. I know that sounds minimal, but there's that too. Or physically showing up on the streets and meeting the same police, chiefs, for instance, or the lieutenants that are in charge of keeping the peace, or whatever, they like to say. And you're meeting the same people, and their personalities, and they're very aggressive and disrespectful and extremely racist. And of course, these are police that are majority not from New York City. They're from Long Island. They're from upstate. Maybe they're from Staten Island, which is New York City. So yeah, I completely hear you. Just trying to explain that a little bit more for our audience. But go ahead, continue.
Hang on, I just want you to see.
If any media, please don't take any pictures of her in this condition.
This poor kid is so shook up, and what you have to understand, again, is that anybody that has been fighting this fight, listen, we're all going through a global pandemic. Like we're all going to have like crazy PTSD of some sort on the other side of this, and but this is elevated. Like this is just to such an infinite degree, because we are being attacked, we are being hunted, and we are being abused by the police. And again, I said this when we spoke last time, but I think it's something that's worth reiterating. Like, as children, we were taught that the police were there to protect us, and that's, our parents told us that. We were taught that in school, etc., etc. And when you become an adult and you live in a city and you watch the behavior of police, you very slowly realize that that's a lie, and that the police are here to preserve the system. They're here to protect Best Buy and Dwayne Reed and Whole Foods, and that's why they're here. Like,
yeah, it's very clear.
Like
they were there before you guys even showed up.
Oh yeah.
So we had a question from CA about wouldn't not standing ground in a certain spot be more optimal? Mobile protesting movement seems like way more efficient. And I think that's a good thing to respond with. Is a great question, because yes, these protests do move through the streets of New York, but they surround you. Can you describe a little bit more in detail, Tommy, like what the physical presence, like what they do on the street, what they do on the sidewalks, how they prevent you from moving? Can you describe that?
Right now, the LRAD is out. And
so explain what that is. That's the speaker system.
Is the New York City Police Department.
See those bicycles? Those bicycles are to block people out.
I'm ordering you to go back on the sidewalk now. If you do so voluntarily, no charges will be placed against you. If you remain in the roadway and refuse to use the available sidewalk, you will be subject to arrest.
So that's the speaker system that they have. Well, look at Tommy, can you show us the motorcycles? So all the bicycles are there to block, as you see. Not like anybody's trying to push through, because you see folks aren't doing anything. They're trying to keep them on the sidewalk, and then what they do is they contain them into the sidewalk, and they do kettling, so they can't move. But it's not like folks can leave. Like, it would be much easier if they just let them move through the streets and chant. But by doing this, they're provoking more frustration. But the reality is that this protest doesn't seem to be that animated. I mean,
there is no doubt 5 cops for every person here.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And there's motorcycles too. Look at that. I mean, how bored? Must they be?
But it's important to show people this. Like it you know,
Motorcycles, all cops. Cops
freedom.
behind the motorcycles.
Freedom in America, 2020.
Yeah. Yeah. This is. I mean, this is New York City, right? So Tommy, what are folks that you're with saying?
Fuck 12. I mean, that's what they're saying. I mean, listen, everybody here is very upset. They hurt a bunch of people. They arrested a bunch of people. And, you know, they're walking around swinging their nightsticks like, you know, like a cartoon policeman. You know what I mean? Like, you know, who the hell wants to see that? Like, no, this is literally a bunch of kids. Like, it's a bunch of, like, college-age kids who are here to express their voices about their continued fight for Black Lives Matter at all. And, you know, this is what we get. For you know, trying to come out and speak our minds. Like this is what peaceful protest is met with in November of 2020 in the United States of America.
The day after the election, in which it seems very clear that Biden has a path without courts, at this point at least, without courts intervening, to a presidency. I mean, as of 20 minutes ago, that's what it looked like. So it's nowhere near what they were expecting, yet they're meeting force as if they were going to expect thousands of people on the streets, you know, destroying whatever they thought they were going to see.
That's not happening.
It's not happening.
I mean, that's not happening. Like, I mean, there is not, you know, there's no new graffiti. There's no broken windows. There's none of that tonight. I mean, you know, in the past, yeah, there were crazy nights, but not tonight. You know, like this is not one of those nights. Like this is a night that was completely peaceful and that was aggravated and instigated by the NYPD. But that's what they do. I mean, what I worry about is that this is not only going to remain the same, no matter who wins the election. I am concerned that this is going to escalate. And I think that is a valid concern because there are a number of reasons why both sides would have a reason to do that. And there's different backstories and there's different, I mean, you know, listen, we presently have a president who went on television last night and basically said that, you know, that democracy is a joke and that, you know, that you're not to trust the election results.
Right.
Like, I mean, like, so that's the current president.
He's inciting the next wave of, I mean, when the results come in that are abundantly clear and nowhere near as close in terms like if he's banking on Pennsylvania and courts, it may not happen. And as a result, it's just going to come down to him being like, it's not legitimate, but having no reason. And then his crazed supporters are going to go out in the streets and they're going to look for this tension. And of course, the cops are more aligned with those folks. So I think they're looking for that instigation and almost, you know, manufacturing it at this point.
I mean, did you see the letter that he sent out to his donors tonight?
I did.
Where he literally told them to fight.
Yep.
Like that was an order. Like the president of the United States just told, you know, 40 to 45% of the country who supports him, like to go out into the streets and protect the vote. And we saw wacko shit from Michigan, and we saw these people banging on the windows trying to stop them from counting ballots. And like, I mean, it's just like, you know, listen, like
The Nevada guy.
You and I have seen some crazy shit. You know, like we've gone through a lot of different stitches of this.
Yeah.
Through Bernie and Standing Rock and DACA, and there's been many fights that we've been a part of that that have been centered around protest. But I'm telling you that something changed drastically in May going into June, and there was a viciousness and an evil in the eyes of these police. And tonight, earlier, there was a cop that was talking shit to the kids in the crowd and was laughing at them. And I was like, how does this help? Like, like how is this supposed to, I mean, and of course, their directive now is to provoke. That's it.
That's
like
just so strange. Like they're told, they're supposed to be trained. They're supposed to be trained to minimize conflict.
I mean, oh, here we go.
All right, let's see this real quick.
Of course, as a second, that's not that much to ask for. I don't need a gun in New York City. Why the fuck would I need a gun?
I mean, somebody's talking to them, but like, I mean, listen, like, there's something that I think that we all have to remember while all of this happens, and that is to those of the proverbial you in this country who are sitting at home and they're not doing anything about this as this is happening. I mean, you are broadcasting this out to people all over the place. You are doing something incredibly important right now. And you should continue to do that. But anyone in this country that has the means and the time and can go out into the streets, listen, all you have to do is just show up. Like you don't have to participate in anything. Just watch. Just go. You see a protest, just go outside and walk alongside it and just watch. And just take a good look at what the police in your city is doing. And there are police departments all across this country, from Seattle to Portland to Chicago to Austin, Texas, to Detroit to here, and they're awful, and they pull crazy shit on innocent kids, and they do stuff that they shouldn't be doing. And when is this going to stop? And the answer to that is when more than a handful of people speak out about it. That's why I'm here. It's why I've been here for 10 years. Like, I mean, like, you don't think after the day that we all had yesterday, you don't think I would have liked to have sat home tonight and relaxed?
Exactly.
I mean, I was on a bed of nails like everybody else was last night. And this is not where my ideal idea of relaxing is, but I thought it was incredibly important to show up tonight and be present and bear witness to whatever was going to happen. And unfortunately, it turned into this. And, I feel like this is going to happen more and more. I think this is only a taste of what's coming in the future. And I think that, we have to be really, really careful and make sure. I mean, listen, I don't want to be a fatalist here, but after seeing what I just saw and the escalation that has gone on in the NYPD over the last 6 months, I'm not exactly sure how you would ever try to pump the brakes on. Like, I'm not sure this is something that can be fixed. I mean, this is the whole idea of why we wanted to defund the police, because, like, this doesn't work.
So that's a really important point, because we're about to go into a mayoral election in New York. And I'm editorializing here, but not one candidate right now. Probably New York City politics and the progressive electeds in New York City, many of whom are friends, it's very hack. It's very power based and not who's going to defund the police, who's going to do it. And right now, nobody who's running has that ability or willingness or independence to do so.
My favorite commercial that runs on New York television, and it makes me crack up, is there's this twerp here in New York. His name is Max Rose, and he has these commercials on TV.
Well, he just lost.
Yeah, good, because
to the Republican.
Well, you know what? That's not good, but fuck him. Like, he has these commercials where he just says out of nowhere, total non sequitur. He's like, and of course I'd never defund the police. And I'm like Daniela and I look at each other and we're like, this motherfucker. Like, you know, like, come on. Like, what are we gonna do? Really? Like, why even say that?
Because he represents Staten Island. And
well,
that's the game there. But with that being said, he's saying the quiet thing out loud that the rest of the Democrats who are running for mayor right now believe. I mean, I ran for citywide office. I can tell you firsthand, and Tommy, you supported me, that there is absolutely no progressive force in New York City that understands the complexities or the money that is, check this out, understands the money that is controlling everybody in this city. Progressives included, real estate developers and police. You want to know? Charter schools, real estate developers, and police, charter schools in the state senate, but it's police that are controlling Bill de Blasio and real estate that controls Bill de Blasio. And everything else, he's as progressive as everybody else is. And he was the progressive in that race. And right now, there was no progressive in the race running for mayor of New York. But how incredible would it be if there was somebody who could wither off the storm of smears and attacks, and now that there's ranked choice voting in New York, who could really run as an independent, raise the money, do this and take on the police so that this kind of stuff doesn't happen, as we live in a state where you have fascist tech companies that are minimizing speech on the left. And you still have attacks on unions that are coming from inside the Democratic Party, preventing people from organizing. And you have factional politics, even in the most democratic cities, preventing truly independent progressive voices from running and being able to run without being attached to some sort of institution. That is how you shake this up. And until we're able to do that, this stuff is going to keep happening worse and worse, because you don't have any Democrats or progressives who are actually taking on the police. Showing up at a protest, at a press conference, is not taking them on. And I'm not saying you're not. I mean, as an elected official, as a citywide elected official, you have to challenge their money.
I mean, listen, like, you know, we know now, like, you know, with all that we've witnessed, you know, through the years, this is all about money.
Yep.
Everything is about money. I mean, like, you know, the reason why there's 6 gazillion cops on the streets tonight is because they're all going to get paid overtime, and, you know, everyone in the Police Benevolence Association is high-fiving each other because these guys just all made thousands of dollars tonight for standing around and being assholes and beating up kids. Like, so, you know, you know, and you know, the reason that they're out is because, again, you know, they're protecting the Citibank and the Capital One and the Whole Foods and the, you know, like
this is crazy. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's just looking at that picture.
No, I mean, you know, like this is the same old stuff. You know what I mean? Like, there's you know, there were 200 people here before. There's probably 100 now, and there's just as many cops. So it's not like the cops have retreated. And what are they doing? They're keeping everybody from walking in the street. Yeah. Look out! We all know the downfall of New York City is if anybody walks in the street.
Meanwhile, what's so interesting about that, I'm thinking about the neighborhood, right? That's a very expensive area to live in, near Union Square. And I mean, I can't imagine that the businesses like to be boarded up, which was basically something was instigated by the police presence. I can't imagine that the residents want to hear the sirens and then look out their window and say, "What the fuck going on?" I mean, you and I both know we've been on the streets before, and we've seen folks that were on the other side of the street see how the protesters were being treated and then joined over. I remember this one time we were in a it was right after Trump was elected, maybe like November or December, and we were in front of Trump Tower and they were kettling us in, and I was reporting for TYT, so maybe it was January, and this a lawyer who was wearing like a trench coat, very, proper. He was a young lawyer. He goes, what are you guys doing? This is against the law. And he comes over and he starts arguing with the cops, and then they push him in and he becomes one of us. And he's like, I didn't sign up for this. And we passed some elderly people on the corner and they were like, this is not appropriate. Let them protest Trump. What are you doing? And like the residents of New York City do not seem to be the residents that are not the activists.
Roll it out. Hang on. Let's watch this.
Let's watch this for a bit.
It'll be fun.
It'll be fun.
This will be fun to watch the rollout.
It's like a red carpet for fascists.
What's up? Anyway, I'm gonna go back and film the cops. I'll see you guys later.
It's like the whole thing is like one big Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade. You know what I mean? Like that's what that.
Where's the blimp?
And it's like who does this like persuade to not do this? Who does this like I mean, and, the whole thing is just like, it's just disappointing that like you live in a city where the taxes are high and we pay crazy amounts of money for rent, and
as an individual.
What do we get in response? We get this. We get a police state, and this is not, you can't say that like this is what the rich want, because I don't think it is. Like if the rich wanted like things to be quiet and uneventful, they would just move to Woodstock. You know what I mean?
That's exactly it. I don't think that the people in that neighborhood are sympathetic to this. I mean, I know that because you and I both know New Yorkers. And of course, you've got the New York Post crowd who's always going to be Staten Island focused, a little bit more conservative. Staten Island's a little bit more remote, or parts of Brooklyn, Bensonhurst, near, But when you're looking at like Manhattan, they don't want to hear this. They don't want to. And they look out the window and they see, oh, there's like a bunch of kids just being anti-Trump. Like,
okay, hang on. I want you to see this. There's probably about 20 protesters left, right? And I want you to see how many cops are still here. So like no one's around. No one's around. And then all these bike cops are still here.
Unreal.
All police. And for what? There's no one here.
Yeah.
Why are all these police still here? Look at this. Look how many. I mean, look up here.
Look at the ones in the yellow shirts.
Like,
what?
I mean, this is
police rally.
Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, it's MAGA on wheels is what this is.
Okay, so there's a guy in our chat. I'm sorry, I haven't been checking the chat as much, guys. It's a little hard for me to do it simultaneously. But we don't have any moderators in there as far as I know right now. So as soon as we get some questioners, and they say none of these police can afford to live in the city because they're not paid well enough. I mean, that's just not true.
Nope,
these police
not at all.
Didn't live in the city. They're imported from Long Island. Like, that's the thing. Like, you go around, I bet you if Tommy went and interviewed, most of them would be from Long Island, maybe from upstate, maybe Staten Island. Let's just, throw that out there. Maybe they are from the city, they're from Staten Island, but they're not from Manhattan. And, when we're in Astoria, they're not from Astoria. I find this is the conundrum, is it's like you have a different culture being imported in to occupy a city that has a different acceptance of freedom of speech. and freedom of expression and freedom of organizing. And like you said, they're getting paid overtime right now. And that's this is the craziest part of this union. The strongest union in America is the police union.
Oh yeah, scariest one too.
You know, can you imagine if like flight attendants and teachers and nurses had this type of power to, just this support that Republicans and Democrats were beholden to them and had to do everything that you couldn't question them. And this is unreal. And to be like in the Russian Revolution, this was a big part of it was an idea how to unionize the police against the working people.
Well, this is why they have to go. Like, this, there are many things about the American experiment that we have come to terms with the fact that are garbage and that don't work and that don't benefit people. And we can thank Mr. Bernard Sanders for bringing a lot of that into the light and showing mainstream America that, there are problems and there is sickness and there is just rot and ooze that needs to be removed from this country that has been ignored for hundreds of years. And until those problems are fixed, I come to, again, protest 10 years, like, the first person to get arrested at every protest is a black kid. Doesn't matter what the protest is.
I'm having trouble hearing you, Tommy.
Huh?
Last couple of words, having trouble hearing you.
No, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I said, you go to a protest and the first kid that they arrest at every protest is a black kid. Doesn't even matter what the protest is for. Like, they'll just pick a black kid to arrest. And it's like, you're going to tell me that that's got nothing to do with nothing? Come on. Like, that is, incarceration, as it was mentioned earlier at the teach-in, that was going on moments before all of this mayhem began. But incarceration is the continuation of slavery.
It is, absolutely. As is, and the police were there to control slaves.
Right.
The inception of the police in the United States.
And this is, look at these bozos. Like, they're still here, swinging their nightsticks. Like, and for what? Like, literally for what? Like.
So here's.
There's no one here. Like, there's literally nobody here. There's like 10 people left from this protest. And look at this police presence.
Tommy, how much of this do you think is really just Trump exercising his muscle to say, you can't F with me movement, and we're going to patrol your cities where you organize because that's where you're all located, and we're going to stop you from pushing back. I think the problem is he just doesn't have that electoral path to even make it that close. So, Tommy, I'm so grateful that you did this. I'm really thank you for sharing this with our audience. This audience is, as we've been covering this election, we want to do a lot more on the streets. So if you're out on the streets, I would love to continue to cover this stuff with you. I'm in a swing state right now doing swing state stuff because it might come down to Arizona. But normally I'd be out there with you. And I'm just, we're really, really grateful for you to be able to show what this police force is like right now.
Listen, if I can just say one last thing.
Yes, please, of course.
The reason why I'm here, the reason why we all came out tonight, we came out to protect Black lives. We came out to protect Black, trans, and queer lives. Like, this is about, who, as everyone chants, who keeps us safe, we keep us safe. Because the cops don't. Because the cops abuse us. The cops beat us. The cops incarcerate us. So, we have to fight this. And I don't know how much of this is going to remain on the other side of this election. But I can tell you this, I don't have a lot of faith that it's going to change. And I feel like from the momentum that we had from May into June, that this is going to get worse. I mean, I really believe that it will. And the reason that I say that is my eyes. It's what I'm seeing. I am seeing an escalation
All those cops
of
cars,
police presence.
This is insane.
And that is what we're dealing with. And there is, look how many people aren't here. And look how many cops
Put
are
that in
still
perspective,
standing.
like on a normal night in Union Square, there are more people there just crossing through, and they're not even hanging out there because they're scared. There's a major subway stop there. It's a huge hub of the city, and you just see more people just like going through there because they need to like go to dinner, go to their job, get home from work, whatever. They're scaring people off the streets of New York who just need to like get home.
Well, and I feel like this is not dissimilar to other times in New York City policing. I think the police were always here to scare people. I mean, I think the police, I mean, especially in a city like New York, like, you go back to the 70s when the president told the city to drop dead.
Yep.
And it was basically on its own. Like, the police were here to scare the shit out of people so that they behave, and that, all of what they didn't want was pushed out into the outer boroughs, and they kept Manhattan as sane as they could. And this is just another moment in time where we're dealing with this once again. And I feel like there's still a few kids that are hanging out in actual Union Square. I'm happy that it didn't make everyone totally scatter, but I really think that we have to take a deep breath and prepare ourselves for an era that is going to be unlike anything that we've ever seen. Like, this is not going to be the sigh of relief that everybody gave when Obama won in 2008, and the war machine, quote unquote, was stopped. Now, we know that didn't happen, and it kept on rolling, and it morphed into other things.
Yeah.
And none of what we were promised, all of that change and all of that hope that we were sold, got completely taken away and never happened.
Yeah.
And I mean, in a way, what we're dealing with now is, we weren't even promised anything. I mean, literally, like, what were we promised? We were promised no real change. That was like the big byline, was that like things weren't going to fundamentally change. Dear God,
Go back to
look
brunch.
at what we're dealing with. How on earth could this not change? Like, we are living in a country that has a completely explosive economy that like is literally going to go into smithereens at any moment.
Yeah.
And is connected. Look at this. There's another
Wait,
cop parade going on.
What is it? Oh, look at that.
Just another parade of police vehicles trucking down blocks, like trying to do whatever they're doing.
And the weird thing is that it's so incremental that you don't even realize. Like, if we had gone back 20 years after 9/11 and saw that kind of presence after 9/11, we would have been like, well, what are you doing after 9/11 in
Right.
New York? There's nothing happened tonight, and that presence happened. So it just shows you how the slow ease. I mean, yes, the streets were shut down, but people were able to walk around. They were able to give, mutual aid, and obviously it was a horrifying situation, but you didn't feel like you were being occupied. And that is this feeling here, is it's just like You don't have the
Oh, yeah.
freedom in the city to. I mean, I've worked in countries in occupation essentially by forces, and there's not a dissimilar feeling. I think what's just strange about it is you have a Bank of America and a Whole Foods and you have a Barnes and Noble right there, like, and in Libya, like, you don't have that. That's just.
But the weird thing is that the way I started this night off, before the protest began and before I even arrived to the protest, from the amount of police that I witnessed on the streets, I wrote on Twitter that New York City is being occupied by the police. Like there has been an occupation, like a hostile takeover of this city by the police. And it is just never, it's nonstop now. Like you hear sirens all night. There are helicopters in the sky like there's been in LA for years.
Yes, exactly.
We never had that. I mean, we didn't even have that on the other side of 9/11. Like, there weren't helicopters in the sky, like patrolling whatever. I mean,
if anything, it was a very disconcerting feeling for New Yorkers. So this as a New Yorker, if there's a plane that like starts to go over the city, you always have this immediate reaction of like, whoa, like what's going on here?
That's a little low. Like,
yeah,
I mean, I hear
we all
every time, like if there's like weird cloud cover or something, like the first thing anyone says is like, oh, that looks a little low. Like, I mean, I just think that it is extremely important for us to consider and actually come to terms with the fact that this is how it is now.
Yeah.
And we are going to have to figure out how to fight this, how to dismantle this, and how to organize our communities against this kind of intrusion. And if you live somewhere where you haven't seen this yet, it's either because you haven't noticed it, you haven't paid attention, or it's just not that bad yet. But it's coming because this. I'm telling you, from the changes that I've been witnessing, these have to be coming from somewhere.
This is not like I said from the top. Trump didn't have a military. He didn't have a military. The military generals, altered on him, of course. But he has the police. And if the coup was going to happen and operationalize in any actual way with force, it was going to happen that way. The police that have organized white supremacy is being investigated right now by the FBI, has been continuously. I always have to say that when people are like, oh, the police aren't white supremacists. It's like, no, they're actually being investigated by our own FBI. So the police that were born out of controlling slaves in Manhattan, where the slave trade came in from the Caribbean and was distributed. I mean, we had an interview last week. If you didn't get a chance to hear it, it was an amazing interview about how there's a book out called The Kidnapping Club, where in Manhattan, which was against the rest of New York State, was pro-slavery and sided with the South, and there were white women and men who would call out free Black men, and they would get rounded up and put into this thing called the Kidnapping Club. And it's
another parade. I'm listening.
It's just such an extraordinary history once you start to see the reason why they were preserving this power structure in New York was because Wall Street. The reason why Wall Street exists is because it was the entrance of the slave trade. It's right there by the port of New York, right? Like, this. You go a few blocks down from Wall Street and you're right there. That's the port. That's the port my grandfather came in on. When they dropped him off from Ellis Island, they went there, and then, he entered New York, and that was what he saw the big buildings, and it was overwhelming, and people in suits, but it's also the port that slaves came in from. And that's the history of New York being the economic capital of the world, and it's why New York is New York. It was built off of slavery. And these police were there to prevent any sort of unruliness. And then later, when Black men were freed, and women by default, because of course, they were seen differently, they were rounded up, even though they were free, by white people in New York who thought that this was what they were supposed to do. It's a bizarre story. I mean, it just kind of adds so much complexity and shows you the power of rural, which was much more progressive than New York City was. And I think that also explains a lot in terms of back then, progressive was populist and capitalist was racist and conservative. Somehow it all started to muddy.
Well, and also, like, let's not forget, like, George Washington, didn't George Washington live in New York? Because New York used to be the capital, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that like a thing? Like, he lived here for a minute. Wasn't he like sworn in here or something? Like,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not like a great historian or anything, but like, I mean, he was a slave owner, so like it makes perfect sense that like if he ever spent any time here, that there would have been residual effects of that as well. You know what I mean? And again, the whole damn thing goes back to money. Like that's the scariest part of all of this is that like, there's, I mean, you remember you grew up, you grew up around New York.
I grew up in Buffalo.
Okay, but you came to New York and you saw New York in a different form than it's in now. I'm sitting in Union Square, and across the street from me is a Whole Foods. Where the Virgin Megastore used to be,
right,
is now a Citibank. And like all of these like things that were like so much a part of I mean, this neighborhood didn't used to be like this. Like,
right.
I mean,
that's where what's his name had his studio. He had 2 studios where he used to
Warhol.
Yes, exactly, Andy Warhol.
Yes.
Right there in a big building. It's like kitty corner to the Whole Foods. You can probably point to it right now.
There.
Yeah, he had next to each other. He had his big, his studios, his lofts. I mean, this was the arts scene. Yeah.
And that's where Warhol's factory was, and where the W is right there.
Right. The W.
Like that's where Max's Kansas City used to be, which was where so many major musical moments in New York history happened. Bruce Springsteen's like big breakthrough show was there. Bob Marley's big breakthrough show was there. Like,
that's insane. That's crazy. Right there in the midst of all this.
And it's where the W Hotel is, and specifically, I think it's now a deli, which is like, like you it's like, oh, I'm gonna go in for some Doritos, and it's like, dear God, this is where like Andy Warhol used to hang out. Like, it's like, what have we done to New York? Like, but listen, like I'm gonna end this on a high note because I think that we should.
Yeah.
Like, I think that whatever is about to happen, we are going to have to, as activists and as responsible Americans, we are going to have to watch every move like a hawk, that whatever administration is going to take the reins in 2021, we're going to have to fight like hell to make sure that, like, everyone is taken care of and everyone is looked out for. And if we ever truly want to live in a not me, us world, which I know you do, and I know I do, and I know most everyone who's watching this does, like, we are going to have to continue to fight all of this. And like yourself, your people are going to have to run for office, and they're going to have to infiltrate this mucked up system that we are trying to fight. And I wish there was a way that we could snap our fingers and make this all go away.
Yeah.
but that's not going to happen. It's going to take a lot of work, and it is no one's responsibility singularly. It is all of our responsibility. And if you are going to be a unfortunately this word has been like absolutely soiled over the last 4 years, but if you're going to be a patriot, and if you're going to be like, a functional, proud American, like, you're going to have to stand up to the oppression that is now what is normal in our society. And I don't think it's impossible. I think it can happen. Like, and I am gonna be here anytime that I feel like I need to be. I mean, you would show up to protest and you'd be like, and there's Tommy. Like, I mean, it was like, who's the big guy?
In different cities. I mean, you and I have run into each other. We were like being firebombed in front of, like, in Washington D.C. We ran into each other. I mean, many instances. You and I we should write a short book about this. We just run into each other in crazy places, and it's poetic, but it's, and in the heat of it all, you don't. I think one thing that I've recognized, especially being in the studio right now versus on the streets, where I was last time, I've recognized just how fast it all moved. And when it moves that fast, you don't recognize the police presence growing little by little every day. The protest energy shifting and going from being hopeful and exciting to militant to angry, and then everybody starts fighting with each other, and then there's instigators, and the ease into fascism creates fascism in a way that, like, how do you change your tactics to combat it? But then also it creates dynamics internally where our angst is pent up, and instead of out on them, it comes out on each other. And so my one addendum to your comment about running for office, having run for office myself, I have to say, there's a tremendous sacrifice in running for office on the left and not taking corporate money, not aligning with interests, not aligning and really doing it that way. But we as a movement need to be militant in how we approach that. We need to recognize that there will be instigators, there will be people trying to sabotage campaigns. That's always happened in politics. That's not a new thing. That's not conspiratorial. It happens all the time. And if you don't know that, you haven't worked in politics long enough. We have to realize solidarity. We can't cancel our friends and our allies because we heard a thing on the internet that was quoted in a right-wing publication. We have to be here for each other, because that's how you win power. And if you don't have that solidarity, you don't have the power. And if you don't have the power, that's how stuff like that continues to happen on the streets. And it's just going to get worse. And it's like, actually, my friend said this today, and I wouldn't have said it, but I thought it was provocative. Don't bring your feelings to a gunfight.
I mean, and also, I think that it needs to be said that we have to be very careful who we align ourselves with, and we have to do our own, due diligence and vetting of, like, oh, I'm gonna jump on, and be a part of this person's thing. Well, it's like, okay, yeah, but what is this person's thing really about? Like, and you have to do the work to find out what that stuff is, because the one thing that I think a lot of people, I mean, listen, it's not like any of us are taught anything about the Black Panthers in school. Right. But like one of the things that is the most striking lesson to be learned from the Black Panthers is that by the 70s, which was only like 3 or 4 years into their existence, like, by the 70s, 1 out of 4 Black Panthers was either a cop or was an informant or was like on the take. Yep. And was regurgitating whatever they were being told to somebody else. And when that's a pretty bad ratio. Like, you don't want, You don't want 1 out of 4 of the people in your squad to be, to be a squealer. Like that's not really going to help you make moves. And I think that, and listen, that has nothing to do, and by no means, unfortunately, they've done a wonderful job over the years of painting the Black Panthers as these like maniacal lunatics, when in reality, they were just trying to fight for their own community. They were trying to feed their people and feed their kids and educate them and save them from diseases that nobody gave a shit about until their own community did. And there was work that was done by them that was extraordinary, and all of that gets like brushed under the rug of them being radical and inflammatory and all of this other stuff. And it's like, no, actually they were just trying to like not have the entire world treat Black people like shit.
I mean, like, Fred Hampton, the way that Fred Hampton was killed, so he was extremely young, like 21 or something. Tommy, we lost your video. We
no. Hang on. No. Daniela was calling me, so she
Daniela,
it hijacked the screen, but no. Listen, this is a perfect time to like to say good night. And like, if there's one thing, please, everybody, like, I know that the Borat movie was getting all the juice, but please take 2 hours out of your week and watch the trial of the Chicago 7.
Yeah.
It is wonderful. I mean, obviously, if
only it was done by somebody else, though. I mean, it's an important story that we need to know and hear.
Well, no. Yeah. Listen,
if it wasn't Aaron Sorkin.
Of course, it's like, it is what it is. And I mean, there were liberties taken for sure, but watch it and then please go research and read up about what happened in the park at the 68 convention. And you'll learn a lot about where all of this comes from and how all of this started. Like, it's important stuff. And those 8 guys, and I won't go into why they're called the Chicago 7, even though they were 8. Yeah. Like, that's a whole other saga. But like, watch it and then dig deeper. Like, it is definitely a good starting point to get to know like kind of how all of this started to get the way that it is now, and why there's helicopters still flying overhead as I'm talking to you, which makes 0 sense.
There's nothing. I mean, so guys, do your research about folks. But when I say research, it doesn't mean like, did they get in a fight with someone online, or did they say something when they were 19 years old? Where's their money coming from? There's one research that helps you understand what somebody does, because you have to, for the most part, we have to disclose public funds, right? Where is the money coming from? Is it coming from big developers? Is it coming from police? Are they, is it coming from Republicans? This is how you understand. And I don't mean like an individual who's working for Uber. I mean like, is the executive of Uber, because most, are there institutions lining up to back up this individual? Who are those institutions? Where are they getting their money from? That's how we have a deeper understanding of the political systems. And I worry we're not there yet. But you're right. We have to do our research. And Tommy, have a safe trip home. Keep me in touch about what's going on in the streets, and just very grateful for your presence and your voice, and thanks for speaking, because one thing I'm not sure our audience knows, they probably do. I think a lot of folks on our channel are engaged in organizing, but it's not common that folks want to appear on camera. So this is a very important thing. Like, thank you for being able to speak out while you're out there in the face of cops who, of course, I mean, you even heard it, like, take the camera off in the background. But if folks don't know, because they're seeing helicopter versions from CNN of the cops, you got to see it straight up, like what's happening. because CNN's going to have their reporters further out because they don't want to have their reporters injured potentially.
Right. Listen, all power to the people.
Much love.
Good night.
Good night. Take care.